now I just want to talk about some of the most common ones. For modifiers and for a lot of things in Blender, I find that the 80-20 rule applies. So I generally use 80% of the modifiers 20% of the time, and 20% of the modifiers 80% of the time, which is to say that there's just kind of a couple that are most helpful. So let's say I'm making a box, a cardboard box, and I start with a cube, and I wanted this to have like an opening in the top. I could do this several ways. I could take the top face, I could inset just a little bit, and I could extrude, and I could try to line it up so that it is the perfect thickness. And there we go. I have a box. This, however, is slightly hard to change because if you wanted to like make this wider, I'd have to go in and select all of these vertices and push them out. And it's just not a very, I don't know, it's not an easy way to get around if you're just trying to make something this simple. But if I just delete the face, the face, you'll find that it's super thin and it doesn't quite look like cardboard. So how do we solve this? Well, you still end up deleting the face. And then what I can do is I can go to the modifiers tab and search for something called solidify, which does exactly what it sounds like. It just kind of extrudes out the mesh and adds a little bit of thickness to it. So this is good for things that are kind of like an open geometry, like a bowl or a cup or a like a box like this. If you don't want to deal with like trying to model out the actual thickness, you just can like add a little bit of thickness to it. You can use this modifier and you can procedurally add thickness to an object. Another useful modifier is one called the wireframe modifier, which basically just like takes all the faces of an object, deletes it, and then adds thickness to the edges. So it looks something like that. This is really good if you're trying to make like a fence or like a grate or like a net or like a spider web sort of thing. And this works for any type of object. So if I had a donut, I could do it for that. And you can kind of get some fun shapes. One of my favorites is one called simple deform, which is really fun to use on characters like Suzanne. So if I go to my modifiers under deform, simple deform, it's basically like, I call it like the VeggieTales modifier, because you can just get these exaggerated like squash and stretch sort of effects. If you're going for like a sort of a cartoony animation where you have a character like bouncing up and down, you can just use this modifier to just kind of like warp them a little bit. There's like a bend one. You can twist. So it can just let you create shapes that would be really difficult to model. And it just lets you kind of distort objects in a really easy way. You can bend it. It's kind of funny to play around with. The wave modifier is kind of fun because it lets you create basically like a puddle splash. I go to deform, wave, it does that. And you can change the width. I'm just going way too fast. There we go. So that one's fun. You make like ripples in a pond.